Guys, I'm so excited today. We have Soren, who is the founder of Workclub, the beautiful space that we produce our show from today. And we'll be talking about how to create an environment that's really conducive to new ideas and new relationships. Welcome to Dismantle. Hey guys, I'm here with Soren Trampendach, the founder of Workclub, the beautiful space that we shoot this podcast in now. And workplace thought leader. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hey man. Speaking of this place, because we are here and it's going to get mentioned a few times, what's your favorite thing at the moment about Workclub?
About the physical space?
Either. Do you think of it as a split physical and environmental space?
I'm thinking much less about the physical space right now. I'm thinking more about sort of ecosystems and how Workclub kind of can reach out into, much bigger ecosystems, just our own ecosystem or community, if you like.
Great.
So that's what interests me right now.
Dude, I think the physical thing always impresses me when I walk in there, but it is a split second thing, and I think it's complementary to the whole concept.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you just explain what that concept was to begin with?
Yeah, sure. So I wrote the concept back in 2005, and it's really, like you said, it's actually not coming from a space perspective. It's coming from a theory I have around diversity and diversity in industries and disciplines. So it comes from this kind of fluffy theory I have around Leonardo da Vinci. Yeah. He lived in Florence in the early Renaissance period, where that was the center of the world in terms of new ideas, lots of cultures coming together and lots of new inventions. Yeah. And he at the time was very calculative around who he surrounded himself with in his local network, because he felt diversity in that local network elevated the quality of his works.
Correct.
So that's the really brief version. But I think if the relevance, if you fast forward for today, is that all the disruption that's happening to, all of us, all industries, companies of all sizes, are creating a lot of questions for all of us. Where do you find answers to some of those questions?
Sure.
If you work in your own tribe, industry, network, call it whatever you like, you're less likely to find some of those answers. If you move yourself outside of those, you increase the probability of at least getting different perspectives. Mm-hmm. And that was always the key. So
you thought, how do I actually create an environment like that?
Exactly. Or? Well, so I want as many different kind of industries and disciplines in one place, and that was the main thought first. And then I started thinking about, well, how does that need to look and feel and smell, and what's the experiences you need to build around that hospitality side, and the magic already in my mind was, well, what's our role in facilitating these encounters and conversations between all these different kind of people. I don't want it to be too much where we're kind of in people's face. So it's always this constant trial of being subtle and being in the background and just facilitating it gently.
I think, in terms of like almost a traditional story aspect, what I found being a member, and I see other members too, like the people that are doing the work there and the members are the heroes of the story, and you guys kind of act more like the guide. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
The guide helps them. The hero has their weaknesses and they're trying to look for something like building their business or a new idea, and you guys are kind of giving them that path and saying, okay, you're here now, here's the call to action, like you can work, and we're going to put all these people around you to help.
Yeah, exactly. And also just the ability to actually just connect people and have real conversations. I think a lot of shared spaces, there's a lot of talk about tech and how you're going to through these amazing platforms, you're going to connect everybody. We're kind of gone the complete opposite direction and say it's not about tech. Yeah. The tech is just an enabler, but it is around having real conversations with real people. So everything we do, everything we facilitate is towards that goal of, whether it's a personal conversation, whether it's a business conversation. I think we're all surrounded by so much noise. From social media, from our thousands of friends, online.
That's right.
That's, it doesn't go very deep. Yeah. And I think if we are able to facilitate real conversations, and people stopping up during the day and looking in each other's eyes. And
do you think we're losing that with the kind of digital revolution?
Definitely. I think it's a major issue.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the ones, if we can do a little bit in our world to really foster those real connections, and I think I'll be proud of that if we could do that, because that's what matters at the end of the day. That's why people help other members. That's why you go beyond and you have just meaningful conversations that may or may not lead anywhere, but it's just.
And I guess it's that thing of finding ideas that don't necessarily align with your own as well.
Yeah.
Like speaking of social media, I tend to, even scrolling through my stuff every now and again, I feel like I'm kind of just following, and my network's people that already have the same ideas as me. I think sometimes you have to put yourself in a position where that gets challenged, right? Otherwise you're just along the same path.
Exactly. And I think I'm getting challenged. I'm just thinking about one of our new team members. Actually, it's interesting. I was challenged the other day, and they got a very different sort of view on life. And it was just, it's one that's sort of at the front of my mind right now, because I was kind of, initially I was a bit sort of, I guess, skeptical whether this was the right kind of person in the team. But we have a diverse team, and we brought this individual on board, and it's been interesting because I'm sort of trying to really keep my eyes open and ears, and and I feel I'm learning and just fascinated about that approach to thinking. So different to what I would do. Wow. But it's interesting.
Awesome. But you've come in it with an open mind, right? And kind of not closed off, and I think that environment's really conducive to that, for sure.
Yeah, and just trying to understand where that individual is coming from and how they ended up there.
Yeah.
It's kind of fascinating.
I'm really intrigued, man. Like, what was the theory? Like,
I don't want to sort of spill the beans too much, because it was quite confidential, and but it was kind of a view on life, from a religious perspective as well.
Okay.
Very, very deep rooted religious view on life, and so coming from Denmark, I'm not religious in any way or form, and it was just fascinating to sort of hear, the values and the time committed to that.
Yeah. Does it really stick out in a workplace that's kind of quite commercial driven, as well as the ideology side? What
I always say is to every team member is that you bring all of yourself. Yeah. You don't leave anything at the door. So when you walk through those doors, you don't change personality, become something you think you need to be. You just bring all of yourself, and that's the way you dress, that's the way you bring your quirkiness, whatever that is. Yeah. And we have a much more interesting environment if you do that. And people are just more safe, and they, produce more. They, it's just, everybody just flows better.
Yeah, great. Look, it's amazing you say that, because one of the reasons that I wanted to chat to you about was, our audience is mainly creatives and people that make art for a living and things like that. And I think there's a massive parallel there between, yes, being yourself, about being open to a lot of ideas. And I love that Renaissance period where art was really blossoming, and I think it was because of those ideas, right? But there are definitely parallels between any creative coming in and thinking, I don't need to be true to myself, but I do need to have those other influences, right? External influences are so important. You need to balance them with the internal. Yeah.
And the balance is, when do you stop listening and you do what you think is the right path? And I think there's kind of two sides to that. What I try to do myself, I'm not saying this is right, it's probably not, but I speak to as many people as I can about a certain topic if I want to go deeper. And I get lots of different perspectives on purpose, from many different kind of people. And then I go away and I make my own mind up as to what I think I want to do, and what's my direction.
Yeah.
There's kind of two ways I do that as a one option. And there's also times where I actually don't ask anybody. This is what I'm going to do, and I don't care what anybody else is doing.
Yeah.
And this is the way we sort of look at other shared spaces or other people in our space, where I don't think I've ever been to anywhere else. I'm not looking at any possible competitors. I don't actually care. I have no interest in what they do. I think, I have so many things that I think we can do a lot better, and I want us to do better, and what other people do, I actually don't care.
Yeah, I love that. And we've spoken about it before in terms of a lot of anxiety and fear that holds us back has a lot to do with us comparing ourselves to other people.
Yeah.
Whether that is competitors. I do the same thing. I don't look at any of our competition. I think competition it needs to be an internal thing, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, we improve on ourselves.
Yeah.
But if we're comparing ourselves to what the other people are doing, about what the other business owners doing, what the other creators doing, even where we could be in 5 years or something like that, like that's when we kind of get in our head about stuff and don't take action. Yeah,
and it's limiting as well. If you ask your clients what they want, they're going to tell you what they know they want, not what they don't know.
Absolutely.
And it's like sometimes that comes a bit, across arrogant maybe, but it's not. It's just, if you want to bring something new, there's no point in asking anyone.
Yeah, man. So talking about clients, obviously, I feel you've got this guide set up, but it is very much a service, right? Like you're servicing your client, and when you're saying finding out what they need, what's that process like? And
I think as a service, it's a good word, and it kind of leads into this ecosystem thing that I've got my focus on at the moment, and it's sort of it's moving from just looking at our own ecosystem, which is the Workclub community, to a much wider ecosystem. That's what's interesting me right now. How do we impact a entire community in an entire building, for example, 40,000 square meters, 80,000 square meters. How do we help create a community that sits across that entire building, not just our own club within the building? And that's what's interests me, and I think that's where if you really partner with a landlord, if you really go deep and you try and create an experience for every individual that goes into that building every day, or a visitor, then you're starting to create something which is much more interesting. And any projects that we work on in the future, it's not just going to be our own shared space within a space. It's going to be us taking a role in creating that entire ecosystem. And that means possibly lots of different services around running the front of house for the entire building, opening up our Florence Guild, content event series for all tenants in a building, not just our own members, and just facilitating these encounters and conversations at a bigger scale, and even into a precinct. See how can we facilitate that in a precinct scenario.
Like, that sounds amazing. I think it's something that there's a lot of opportunity there, right? Like, you would have seen a need for that, and that's where you've kind of gone down that path. I did read that you're a young boy at a London concierge.
Yes.
It sounds like it's really similar to that.
It's kind of full circle, because it's absolutely true.
And I'm sorry, but I kind of picture 10-foot Soren in his suit at the front door. Been a little bit intimidating.
I started as a porter. I've carried like 1 million Japanese suitcases back in the time in London. That was back in 1990. And then kind of went from a porter, concierge to head concierge. And I think the whole hospitality component of what we are trying to do too is always, I think it's one that I probably got from there. It was sort of 5-star, and the expectations, and just you take pride in what you do. It doesn't matter whether you're a porter or whatever. You take pride.
It's like going above and beyond as well.
And it's not, you're not higher or lower, or less, more, or less by doing so. It's just you just take pride in what you do, and I think that's what I like to install in all our team. That doesn't matter what level you're at, you just take pride in what you do, and then there'll be the next opportunity for you, to grow and develop. And
do you consciously seek those opportunities out now to kind of go above and beyond and do that in everything?
As a culture of Workclub, that's very much our DNA. That's the kind of personalities we want. We want diversity. We want lots of different kind of people, but they need to be able to, or not be able to, they have to take pride in what they do, and go above and beyond. That doesn't mean time. That doesn't mean, it's just they care.
Do you think that can be trained, or is it an intrinsic personality trait?
I think it's two things. I think they've got to see the purpose of what we're trying to do as well, and they've got to sort of buy into what we're trying to do as a business. And it's not just for the dollars. It's really there's a purpose behind, and I think if they understand that and understand the brand and what we represent, then I think that they do care.
So would you say having that, like a big vision and making everybody aware of that's really important? Yes,
but it's interesting from a business perspective. I think I've both been sitting on the creative and on the business side, but I actually have no strategic planning. I have no interest in a strategy plan. I don't write a strategy plan.
Love it.
My interest is in making sure that the entire team knows exactly what is our brand DNA, so building a culture, a strong culture that is every person in the business knows what our ethics and values are and what we're not, because I want the front of house to be able to make decisions real time, not to go up the chain of command. We don't have a chain of command because it's not the world is changing too fast for that. We need to respond to what members and stakeholders are saying, and everybody needs to be able to do that at every level of the business, and they can that if they understand what is our brand DNA, what we represent, what we don't represent. So that's where I spent the time. That's where we invest, in our Workclub Academy, to make sure that those decisions are made every day of the week, every hour of the week, at the front, and not being delayed by some chain of command, which I think is no more. It's an issue in business today, and it's our advantage over the bigger guys that the world is changing so rapidly that you need to be able to make those decisions on the go.
Yeah, and the ability to adapt, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and evolve. And I think if you make a strategic plan that's 3-5 year plan, we're changing, we're pivoting, we are changing all the time, and it's important for us. It's important for our evolution that we're able to do that.
I've heard you talk about before about that adaptability being a really key asset for everybody across the business. And even myself and our business now, we've sort of, our market that we worked in has gone up and down and shifted, and we've kind of downsized a little bit. And I was talking to the guys about how I kind of feel like it's quite energizing in terms of, it felt like we built this spring up through growth, and then external forces are like compressed it down, and then now I feel like it's kind of like we're ready to spring back up again. Do you find this energy and flow in business and life and ideas? Like, do you have the dips?
Yeah, I think we all have dips, right? Where you question yourself, and where people tell you you're crazy, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
It's if you want to try new things, there's plenty of people who's going to tell you that's not going to be possible. And I remember when I started Workclub, it was I was thinking, I probably need some help on the financial side just to get this off the ground.
Yeah.
But it had been, in my head for 8-9 years before, and just trying to talk to people about it was just, everybody was shaking their head and said, no. I just thought, okay, I'm just going to have to do it myself. And it was a conscious decision at that time too, that I didn't want investors or partners or people on board that would kind of slow me down or that would lock me into a certain path.
Was that based off the experience before that?
Yes.
You learned some shit, right?
Yeah.
You got punched in the face.
I did, seriously. So, I, for listeners, I had a relatively big business before, which was mine. I had 49.9% of the shares, and this big monster had the 50.1%. They were listed in Europe, and it was a big partner across Asia Pacific. When things went well, it was great. When my partner was taken over by the biggest bank of Austria, all of a sudden my partner was a bank, and they had different ideas. And
it was kind of like a phone call, right?
Yeah, it was sort of video conference sitting up in Hong Kong and going from sort of the top of the pile and having 100 people, a relatively big business, was built over a couple of years, to trying to save it, and in the end couldn't save it, and the whole thing just collapsed. And
what was sort of that time period, like when you said you were trying to save it?
It was over 10 months. So when the new bank came in, which was our partner, we had 100 people across Asia. We had 7 offices. Gone from 0 to that in 2 years.
Wow.
And but our whole supply chain, this was office furniture, came from Europe.
Yep.
And we at that point hadn't set up our own supply chain, so we were still relying on our partner. And when that bank came in and took over, they just wanted to consolidate and get out of Asia. So we tried to buy the holding company, we tried to buy the individual companies, everything, for 10 months. And couldn't do it in the end. Long story why we couldn't. But, it's interesting. That was really the trigger point for Workclub. Because if it hadn't happened, I wouldn't have started Workclub back in 2013 because I was too busy doing that.
Yeah.
And then it was kind of a couple of months of reflection and thinking, what now? And
it's actually a good thing to do. Like, you think you took a couple of months to go, okay, well, this is like, would you call that a failure, or is it just like a lesson, or like, how do you actually frame that in your mind when something so big crashes so heavily?
It's interesting, the Americans will call it a failure, and it's great. You learn from it, you go on and do something better next time. But failure or not, I don't.
It's just a chapter.
It's just a chapter. That's exactly right. I think it's more of a chapter, and the whole notion of learning from your failures. I think you only know what you know. You don't know what you don't know, and it's kind of. I'll probably do exactly the same things I did back then because it's kind of, you don't. I don't know what the bank was thinking. I don't know what their drivers were. I think I knew. Yeah. But the reality is that, my perspective may be that there's 5 reasons why this didn't work, but maybe there was 10, and I only knew 5. So I'm not sure I'm going to do anything different next time either. I just did the best I could at the time, and
there's actions and there's reactions, right?
Yeah, and your view of the world is always a view. It's not the whole view, right? Yeah. So I think it's just a chapter, but it's a chapter that's led me to decide that I'm not going to have 49.9% again in the future, and that's a great thing because it sort of allows me just to evolve and pivot.
Can I ask you, because I think that we might be similar in this respect, you get excited about building the new thing. Do you ever worry that you lose focus on the current one? Like, how conscious are you to make sure that ship runs while you build other things?
Yes, and I definitely lost focus on the current one. So that's a good question. And I think it's, for some time I was looking for someone to come on board that could help me with the making sure that didn't happen. Yeah. And, actually there's a friend of mine, or a guy I've known for a while, who had been observed for a few years and thought, oh God, if he could come on board and just run the business, it would be great because he's got all those skills that I don't. And
you had that self-awareness to actually identify that.
Yeah, and I know that, so there was definitely a lot of cracks and drop balls just because, running quite fast and wanting to grow and, looking at new ideas and concepts. And it's amazing because this guy, he actually... Long story short, he's now the CEO of the business, and he's on board, and he's invested a little bit into the business too. So he's sort of part of the whole thing, and we're the yin yang.
Yeah, unreal. So would you say that you were kind of leaning right into your strengths in that thing? Like, you kind of identified that side of things, there could potentially be an issue here, or you wanted to free up that space in your brain to do the more thing that kind of lit your soul up, right?
Yeah, and I think for the growth of Workclub as well, if I hadn't done that move sort of to the side and focus on my strength, it would have limited the growth, I think, of the company. And now with Nick on board, it's he's fantastic at running the business, and I work on my strengths and he works on his, and it's just it seems like this is the next chapter.
Awesome, man! I love that. That's a very overview, big business. We're trying to grow and expand and influence more environments. And I love that that's part of the concept. One of my favorite things when I first met you was passion for the details. And, I came in there as a photographer looking to shoot the space. And I just remember the way you described every stick of furniture, every piece of wood, every bit of leather, like that passion. How important is it to have that passion for the details as well as the overarching sense?
I think it's super important, but I mean, so all the furniture that's in here, for example, is I know, so everything is coming from small factories in Europe, or it's made in workshops. It's not mass produced. It's something that's made to last, so it's going to last for a long time. So it's to me, that's sustainability. You know, sustainability is that you don't throw stuff out. And today we all throw too much stuff out. We
Absolutely.
buy too much crap, and we just throw it out. The whole idea is that I know all the people that's made every piece of furniture here. To me, that matters, and I know the passion that they put into it, the craft and the years, and you know, the whatever generation they're doing this, and it's just, I want to support them, and I know that these pieces that are in here are going to look better in 10 years' time. They're going to look better in 20 years' time. And like all the leather, for example, is all raw leather. The timber is raw. I love patina. I love history.
Yeah.
It's not about protecting it and making it look the same the next 20 years or 3 years. It's about showing that something happened, and stuff happened here, and the rings on the leather tables in the library where you can see the cups have sat, or the white Carrera marble in Melbourne that's got red wine stains in the bar, all of that is just, I love those things, so for every year that we age, in terms of the clubs, I like it. I don't like it when it's too new. It's just hasn't got the character on, hasn't been.
Yeah. You know what, Soren? I think this is a beautiful reflection of everything that you've spoken about in terms of the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And I think that just how you described the furniture pieces, you could describe equally the members and the community and the environment. And people come in there as a new piece of furniture, and they get the ideas and the relationships that actually are sustainable and they last. And hopefully you see the same impact on them as you do in the pieces of furniture, right?
Sometimes I do, and we're not saving the world here. We're not, but we have these round tables where we are 8 people at a time, and sometimes there's some really profound connections made, and it's super powerful when you see it, and when people really let themselves be vulnerable in that environment and open up about what it is that keeps them up at night, whether it's personal or business or whatever it is. And it's just, when people really open up, it's incredible the kind of relationships that are built, and how the other people around the table really want to support. And I think if we all open up and honestly say, I'm not feeling well, or I am feeling well, there's enough people around us who would listen and also happily support.
Yeah. Soren, I think it's a great point, and we can probably all be more vulnerable and realize that you're not alone if you are feeling that way, right? Everybody has those moments. And I think it's great to give other people a chance to help as well, because there is an intrinsic thing within everybody that they want to help support each other.
Yeah.
They want to help. And, I feel like we're at the same place where impact becomes a greater thing that you're trying to be conscious of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Soren, I'd love to end there. Thank you so much.
Great.
There's plenty of stuff there that I think could help.
Thank you.
It's awesome having you.
Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. We're trying to evolve a community here to share ideas and experiences to help each other learn, grow, and support each other as one. To help this movement, you can do 2 things right now. Send this to someone who you think needs to hear it, write us a review, and share it across your socials. And secondly, most importantly, go out there right now and be the best version of yourself that you can be. Be the change you want to see in the industry. You have the power to succeed and lift people up with your art, your words, and your soul. It will take hard work, but be that warrior badass that the world needs more of. Go out there and chase your true potential.